Hello and welcome to Clay to Canopy, the show where I attempt to make just about everything from the ground up. In today's episode, I am going to make this lantern. This process is very similar to papier-mâché, but instead of using newspaper or old scraps of paper, I'm actually using fabric in its place. Now this is an assignment I gave to my 3D class, but I had so much fun making it that I thought I'd turn it into a tutorial. Right now, with this current situation, I am having to teach most of my classes online, and I needed to give them a video tutorial to help them out as well. But it's some pretty basic stuff that you need to make this guy here, and all you need is some chicken wire, which you can get at the hardware store for pretty cheap, some plain muslin that is used for laying out patterns and things like that, some scrap fabric that you're going to use to go over the top of it, plain old white school glue. You do not need a gallon, probably one tiny little bottle will get you through because you do water down the school glue. I have a pair of wire snips and a pair of pliers. You will need something to cut the chicken wire, but there are many different tools you could get, so you don't have to have a very expensive pair of wire snips. Most pairs of pliers have a cutter built into them, so that could be used. It will be a little bit trickier that way. Also, the wire is fairly thin, so you may be able to get away with a sharp pair of scissors to do that with. You'll either need a pair of scissors to cut your fabric or a rotary cutter with mat board. The rotary cutter and mat board process is actually a lot faster rather than having to cut all your pieces with just a pair of scissors. But if you're cooped up with not much to do, a pair of scissors is probably more than fine to get you through. You do not need to light this thing. I did purchase this light kit from IKEA some time ago. It was probably around $5 or $6 and it came with everything I needed, including the light bulb, but you could just go through and make these into little sculptures and not light the piece. I'm gonna go through the steps on how to make this thing, so let's get started. Alright, so I have a piece of chicken wire. You can do this with a square, you know, a 17 by 17, whatever, 18 by 18. But basically, the first thing we're gonna do is draw my ends in together. And this is just to make something that resembles a circular form, and using your little extra pieces that are sticking up here, you can kind of just hold them over themselves. And I'm gonna snip this right here so that I can have these little wings. You want to be careful when you're using chicken wire because these little bits of wire could definitely poke a finger and draw blood, so be on the lookout for that. Having the pliers will help you twist those tips, trying to get all of those little loose ends poking down towards the middle of the piece so that they're not sticking up. So when I go in and start applying my fabric, or if you're using, you know, paper, whichever medium you're using, now I'm gonna draw in the other two ends. So I'm just basically making like a giant envelope. And this material is pretty pliable, so you can just kind of fold it on itself. If you don't have enough here, snip where you need to, and that'll release some so that you have it as a way of hooking. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to try to round off one side, and in order to do that, I'm going to have to bring these ends in, so I have to get rid of some of this extra stuff. So I'm going to just take my corner pocket here, I'm going to look at it and I'm going to go, okay, I want to snip off all of this area. Now I have a hole there and I can begin pinching in, and if you took off too much, you can always patch it later. If you didn't take off enough, you can come back in and just take off some more. This is a very forgiving process, so that you don't have to go too nuts on trying to get everything perfect. Now I'm gonna puff it out a little bit, and I don't like what's happening here as I want it to be a rounded area, so I'm gonna go ahead and snip off some of that so I can tuck it in. And then you can just, you know, pull at it, maneuver it, just kind of reshape it with your hands. All right, so that's a nice curve there. I'm happy with that. I'm gonna go ahead and do that to this other side. Now I'm looking for a profile here of more of a face, so I'm going to be pushing back against this while pulling up right here in the front. I'm going to pinch off these sides so I can get my ears in check here. A lot of the detail is going to come into play when I start applying that fabric, and then I can go ahead and use different colored fabrics that are going to allow for me to, map out where the ears go, where the eyes are, that kind of thing. So right now I'm just trying to get the overall basic shape of the head. It is time to go ahead and begin cutting the fabric for your first layer, the muslin, which I will take you through. I gotta stop messing with this. All right, let me take you through the fabric part, because this is just a quick demo and not me building a whole, brand new art piece. She says as she continues to manipulate the wire. Once you've gone ahead and you've figured out what form you want your chicken wire to be, the next thing you need to do is to begin cutting up your strips. Now you could do that with a regular pair of scissors. I do recommend that you keep your strips to somewhere around 1.5 inches by 2 inches, rectangular type of shapes. I've tested this out with many different types of sizing. Depending on the curvatures that you have going on, the smaller the piece, the better, but you don't exactly want it too small because you don't want it to fall through the chicken wire hole. Anything larger, the pieces tend to fall off or you get lots of little wrinkles. So you want to stick with something around this size. I found these cutting mats at Daiso, which means that they should vend around $1.50 a piece. Daiso is a Japanese dollar store that we have here in California. You can also find cutting mats at the craft store, but this was pretty much the best deal I have found. You probably could also get by with using some cardboard, but if you do use cardboard, you will need to make sure that whatever you're using on top got accurate measurements. The thing with these cutting mats is that they have these handy little tick mark lines. Then I have a rotary cutter, and basically what this rotary cutter is, it's a long cutting wheel. If you're not familiar with what these are, you can get these at the craft store for about anywhere from between $5 to $15 depending on the type you get, but I think I did see some rotary cutters actually at Daiso too. I've not seen any of these at the 99-cent store. I'm sure you could probably find a cheaper version online, but the idea of the rotary cutter is that it has a round blade so that when you're cutting it just cuts in one big loop. And the next thing I have is a ruler. This one is a clear see-through ruler that I get at the fabric store. It doesn't have to be this clear one. You could get any kind of ruler and use it, but you just need a straight edge so that you can have as a guide up. I found that with this muslin, because it's so thin, my rotary cutter will cut through 4 layers at a time. The reason why I don't really like using scissors to cut the fabric, number one, it's much faster using the rotary cutter, but number two, as you can see, I'm getting all these jagged edges with the scissors. Even with very good clean fabric scissors, it's a lot of cutting to do to cover this entire piece. And you can iron this if you want to. I'm just trying to do this in a somewhat fast manner. Just do the best you can to at least get it flat. And then once you have, get yourself onto one of the lined edges here. Once I've cut my strips in the other direction, I'm going to go ahead and line up some strips going the other way, just kind of stack them. Going to give myself that clean edge first, and then count my 5. When you are using a rotary cutter and your mat, be sure to keep your hand away from where the blade is going to go. I'm just pressing firmly down on my ruler here, but I'm making sure that my fingers aren't anywhere in the line of the path of the blade. These blades are very, very sharp, so you really want to be careful when you're using them. Alright, Once you have your form and your fabric cut up, the next thing you're going to need is to mix your glue. So I just have a yogurt container, and any container will work. The glue ratio is just 1 to 1, so you're just going to add the same amount of water as you do the same amount of glue. So it doesn't matter what you use. You mix this up in small batches, and then if you have leftovers, you can just pour it into some container that you have that has a lid so it doesn't dry out on you in between you're using it. So here we go. I'm going to just add my 1 container of water and then fill this up with my white school glue. And get my hand in there, mix it all up. You might want to use warm water so that you're not freezing when you stick your hand in here. Just want to make sure that I get a good mix and that I don't have clumps of glue sitting in there, that it's, you know, really well blended. And then I am ready to go. So I'm going to start by taking about 5 or 6 of these bits of fabric, mix them up into the glue, make sure that they get fully saturated. You don't want to throw a whole bunch of them in here all at once. They can not soak really well, and then if you have them soaking for too long, it's not necessarily a good thing either. So you just give them a second to set up, and then you have to decide what side of this you're going to start on, because you're only going to be able to do one side at a time. And for me, I'm going to be turning this into a lamp. I'll be putting a light bulb fixture at the bottom, and all lamps need to have a certain venting as well, so I'll also be leaving an opening right here in the center. So I'm going to avoid those 2 places. It's probably going to take 3 times of adjusting it to get enough fabric on it to where I have done 1 full coat. And you want to do this very slowly. If you just keep caking on too much of on here and it's not fully dry and you go to flip it over to try and add more on the back side, all the stuff you put on the one side is going to completely fall off. So it's really important that you do one side first, let it completely dry, turn it over, do another section. And I'm going to just begin by applying my fabric. Now that it's set for a couple of seconds, I'm going to then take the piece of fabric. You want to wipe off any of your excess glue. So I'm just scraping it on the side of the bucket because I do want this to dry quickly, and plus any of that liquid that may be built up on the fabric. If you're doing the second side and you've got fabric down at the bottom, the last thing you want is big gobs of glue dripping down to the bottom and rehydrating the fabric that was dry in the first place. So, and then it's just pretty straightforward. You're just applying the bits of fabric and you want them to overlap each other just slightly so that you get a good connection and that you fill in any of those spaces. It's going to take a bit to get this going and get it situated, but once you do, it gets much easier. The weight's going to start doing some funky things because you're going to have a lot of weight where the fabric is and the glue and not so much weight in the other areas. So you might want to, you know, find a way to block this up. Like I have a couple bricks laying in my yard. I might take a brick and just set up 2 bricks here so it doesn't go rolling around on me when I set it out in the sun to dry. I'm going to give it 2 coats. So you want to give this thing 2 full coats of this muslin before you come in and apply your detail colored fabric. With this second layer, I want to make sure to apply the pieces so that they're covering any of the spaces I might have missed the first time around. Before I move forward in adding my decorative pattern fabric, I need to make sure that I get this set up to have this whole fixture working out in here, because I don't want to spend all the time making all of that pretty fabric on and then be maneuvering around and mess up the fabric of the top layer. My fixture will go in here, where I will be needing to change the bulb will be from the bottom, and it's also going to be my area for venting. So obviously this hole is a little too small. I'm going to have to enlarge this hole so I can get my hand in to change the bulb and also to set the fixture. So the first thing I'm going to do is come in and clip the exposed chicken wire here. I'm going to just push my frayed ends down. Now the nice thing about this particular kit is it has this little ring that helps affix it to whatever it is you're putting it in. So as long as I can get this in here, and then I will be sticking my hand in to affix that from the bottom side. But now's the point where I need to check, okay, did I cover enough? And it looks like I need to add a little bit of fabric here and there just to make sure that this thing doesn't kind of force itself all the way through onto the other side. So I'm going to flip to the bottom and cut open this. You might want to wear a pair of safety glasses when you're dealing with snipping wires. And then I'm going to again push that chicken wire back out of my way so I don't cut myself when I try to stick my hand in there. Alright, so I know I need to trim, find something round to make a circle with. Roll of tape, trace that circle, and then I'll have a perfect round as I'm cutting this open. Obviously now I want to remove the fixture because I don't want to be adding wet fabric with this electrical fixture going on. I just wanted to test it out, make sure that all of this part of it is going to work before I continue adding any more fabric. Now I am ready to apply my detail fabric. I have just various colors of this because I am making my gray cat. This one, I'm making this one. The key to think about when it comes to your top layer of fabric is the size of your piece. The smaller the piece, the better detail you're going to get, the more texture it's going to build up, and the more pattern repetition that's going to happen here. So I would recommend, not having pieces that are larger than a 1 inch by 1 inch square. I just wanted to note that you don't have to cut this kind of shape. You can cut any number of different shapes, triangles, circles, as long as they are roughly in the 1 inch by 1 inch type of sizing, you're going to be able to build up some really great pattern and texture. And then varying your colors will give you that detail. Here we go. I'm going to begin at the bottom. And at this stage, this is probably going to take a much longer process because I do want to have that staggered thing. So I'm going to only do the bottom end first, let that dry, and then continue on. This is quilter's cotton. It's pretty much the same type of weight as my muslin. I mean, it might be a little bit thicker, but so I don't have to adjust my glue. The 50-50 is going to be just fine for this application. So I've cut up some triangles in a different color, a little bit of a lighter tone, so I can come in now and do some of the detail work. Alrighty, now it's just time to let this thing fully dry and get that lighting component installed. My lantern is dry, and now I'm going to rig this up and see how this goes. When you go ahead and insert your socket, you want to make sure that the bulb is not going to be catching any fabric, that none of this is going to have fabric in the way of where you're putting it or any of that wire, so that you don't end up with any kind of electrical problems. So because my cavity is really large and I am using this LED bulb, which is only 6 watts, I should be safe. But make sure that before you attempt to wire anything, you consult a licensed electrician, just to be sure that you don't go burning down your house when you do projects like this. And I've got a rig up here. If you did not catch my photo backdrop video where I talked about this guy, this is actually meant for cat or dog grooming, which I ordered thinking I was going to be able to brush my cat's teeth. There was no way that that was ever going to happen. I actually found this very useful to rig up my own lighting when I'm shooting videos or photographing any of my work. And there he is. She is. Oh, I'm gonna kill the lights. It is very much so daylight at the moment. I will try to get some shots of it in the dark It's a bit scary at night, all weird looking. Basically, that's all I have for you today. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Please like, share, and subscribe if you have not done so already, and hope to see you soon.